On March 21, 2024, at exactly 9:38 p.m., security cameras aboard the Carnival Horizon captured footage that would become the centerpiece of a murder investigation. A figure in a navy blue hoodie, head down, hands in pockets, walking quickly through the corridor of Deck 8. That figure was 16-year-old JD, and investigators believe that in his pocket was the knife he had just used to kill his 18-year-old half-sister, Anna Kepner. This is the story of a crime that should never have happened, a family torn apart by obsession and violence, and the chilling evidence that sealed a killer's fate. Anna Marie Kepner was an 18-year-old recent high school graduate from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. She had dreams of studying marine biology in college, a passion that friends say defined who she was. Anna loved the ocean, loved animals, and was known for her kindness and enthusiasm for life. She was the type of person who would rescue injured birds, who volunteered at local beach cleanups, who talked about dedicating her career to protecting coral reefs and marine ecosystems. Teachers described her as bright and curious, always asking questions that went deeper than the standard curriculum. Her biology teacher, Mr. Robert Chen, later told investigators that Anna was one of those rare students who truly understood that science wasn't just about memorizing facts, but about developing a relationship with the natural world. This Caribbean cruise in March 2024 was supposed to be a celebration before she started her university journey. Anna had been accepted to the University of Miami with a partial scholarship to study marine biology. She was scheduled to begin orientation in late August. The cruise was meant to be a final family vacation before Anna left home to start this new chapter of her life. Instead, it became the setting for her tragic death, a nightmare that would destroy multiple lives and raise disturbing questions about family violence, cruise ship security, and whether this tragedy could have been prevented. The Carnival Horizon departed Miami on March 19th, carrying over 4,000 passengers on a 7-day Caribbean itinerary. Among those passengers were Anna and her family, her mother Patricia Kepner, her stepfather Michael Dawson, and her 16-year-old half-brother, whose identity remains legally protected due to his minor status. Court documents refer to him only as JD. The family had booked 2 connecting cabins on Deck 8, rooms 8547 and 8549, paying approximately $3,500 for the week-long voyage. For Patricia, who worked as a waitress at a local diner, and Michael, who worked in construction, this represented a significant financial investment. They wanted to give their family one last memorable trip together before Anna left for college. But beneath the surface of this family vacation, there was tension that would soon explode into violence. To understand what happened aboard that ship, we need to understand the complicated family dynamics that led to this moment. Before we dive deeper into this investigation, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Here at True Crime Vault, we unlock cases that demand justice and reveal the truth behind crimes that shock us to our core. New investigations every week. And trust me, the evidence in this case is more disturbing than you might imagine. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your thoughts as we go through this case. Your engagement helps us continue bringing you these important stories. Patricia Kepner had a complicated family history that would prove relevant to understanding the tragedy. She had been married twice before meeting Michael Dawson. Her first marriage, to Gregory Kepner, produced Anna in 2005. That marriage ended in divorce when Anna was just 3 years old. Gregory had substance abuse issues and was largely absent from Anna's life after the divorce, providing minimal child support and seeing his daughter only sporadically. Patricia then married Robert Dawson, JD's biological father, when Anna was 5, and JD was an infant from Robert's previous relationship. That second marriage was turbulent from the start. Court records obtained by investigators revealed a pattern of domestic violence and instability. Robert Dawson had a criminal history, including assault charges and multiple arrests for driving under the influence. Patricia filed for a restraining order in 2016, citing physical abuse and threatening behavior. She described an incident where Robert had become violent in front of both children, throwing furniture and making threats. The divorce was finalized when JD was 8 years old, and Patricia was granted full custody. Robert's visitation rights were supervised due to concerns about his behavior and substance abuse. 2 years later, Patricia married Michael Dawson. No relation to Robert despite sharing a last name. Michael was described by neighbors and coworkers as a quiet, hard-working man who seemed to genuinely care for Patricia and her children. He worked long hours in construction and provided stability that the family had been lacking. By all accounts, Michael treated both Anna and JD as his own children, though the blended family arrangement came with challenges, particularly regarding JD's adjustment to yet another family configuration. From the moment the family boarded the Carnival Horizon on March 19th, other passengers and crew members noticed something was off about the family dynamics. Thomas Richardson, a passenger from Atlanta traveling with his wife, was seated near the Kepner family at dinner on March 20th, the second night of the cruise. He later told investigators that he witnessed a heated argument between Anna and her half-brother near the Lido deck buffet area. Anna was telling JD to stop following her around and to give her some space. Her tone, Richardson recalled, was frustrated but also carried an undercurrent of something else. Fear maybe, discomfort certainly. What struck Richardson most was JD's response, or rather, his lack of one. He didn't argue back, didn't defend himself, didn't walk away. He just stood there, staring at Anna with what Richardson described as an unsettling intensity that made him uncomfortable enough to remember it days later when investigators interviewed him. Richardson told his wife about the incident that night, mentioning that something about that teenage boy seemed off, though he couldn't quite articulate what it was. Just a feeling, he said. A bad feeling. Maria Santos, a crew member who worked in the ship's theater, also noticed something concerning about JD during the cruise. She had seen him on multiple occasions throughout the first few days carrying what appeared to be a folding knife attached to his belt. This wasn't entirely unusual, as small pocket knives were technically permitted for passengers, though they were discouraged and most passengers didn't bring them. What concerned Santos was that JD seemed to constantly touch the knife, checking that it was there, almost like a nervous habit. She mentioned this to her supervisor, who told her it was probably nothing to worry about unless the passenger was threatening people with it. No action was taken. That knife would later become the murder weapon that ended Anna's life. Other crew members recalled interactions with the family that, in retrospect, seemed significant. Cabin steward Rosa Martinez, who cleaned the family's cabins daily, noticed that Anna's cabin always looked lived in and normal. But she sometimes found the connecting door between the two cabins locked from Anna's side. This struck her as slightly unusual for a family traveling together, though she didn't think much of it at the time. She also recalled that on the morning of March 21st, the day of the murder, she had knocked on Anna's door around 10 a.m. to clean the room. Anna answered and seemed distracted, even anxious. When Rosa asked if everything was okay, Anna smiled and said she was fine, just tired. Rosa remembered thinking that Anna looked like she had been crying, but again, she didn't pry. Passengers had their private matters, and it wasn't her place to get involved. On March 21st, the ship docked at Grand Cayman for shore excursions. The family went ashore together, visiting Stingray City and spending time at 7 Mile Beach. Photographs from that day, later obtained by investigators and entered into evidence at trial, show what appears to be a happy family vacation. Anna is smiling in her turquoise sundress, her blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail, sunglasses perched on her head. Patricia and Michael stand close together, arms around each other. But even in these photos, those who later analyzed them noticed that JD stands apart from the group, always at a distance, always on the periphery. In one photo, while the others are turned toward the camera smiling, JD is in the background, not looking at the camera at all, but rather staring directly at Anna with an expression that's difficult to read. Intense, focused, unsettling. The tour guide who led their Stingray City excursion, Marcus Williams, remembered the family clearly when investigators interviewed him weeks later. He said Anna was enthusiastic and engaged, asking questions about marine conservation and the ecosystem of the Caribbean. She wanted to know about the threats facing stingray populations, about coral reef health, about what individuals could do to protect these environments. She was, Williams recalled, exactly the kind of guest he enjoyed having on his tours. Someone who genuinely cared, who asked questions because they wanted to learn, not just to make conversation. JD, however, presented a stark contrast. He remained quiet throughout the excursion and refused to participate in the stingray interaction, one of the main attractions of the tour. When Patricia tried to encourage her son to join the group in the shallow water where the stingrays swam, JD firmly declined and walked away to stand alone on the beach. Williams remembered this because it was unusual. Most teenagers, even reluctant ones, would at least try the activity once their parents had paid for it. But JD seemed determined to separate himself from the group. Williams recalled seeing him standing on the beach, not looking at the stingrays or the ocean, but watching Anna. Just watching her as she laughed and interacted with the marine life she loved so much. The family returned to the ship at 5:30 p.m. as the vessel prepared to depart Grand Cayman. All passengers were logged back aboard by 6 p.m. through the ship's sophisticated tracking system that used passenger key cards to monitor who was on and off the vessel. The Carnival Horizon set sail for its next destination, Cozumel, Mexico, scheduled to arrive the following afternoon. Anna Kepner would never reach that destination, because sometime in the next few hours, her life would end in cabin 8547, and the person responsible was someone who should have protected her. According to witness statements given to investigators, the family had dinner together in the main dining room at 7:30 p.m. on March 21st. The ship's dining rooms operated on an assigned seating system, and the Kepner family was seated at table 42, a 6-person table they shared with a Canadian couple, David and Susan Chen. The Chens, who were celebrating their 30th wedding anniversary with this cruise, later provided detailed statements to investigators about that final dinner. Susan Chen recalled that Anna seemed unusually quiet that evening, very different from the animated young woman she had gotten to know over the previous dinners. The families had been sharing the table since the first night of the cruise, and Susan had enjoyed talking with Anna about her college plans and her passion for marine biology. But on this night, Anna seemed withdrawn, almost sad. She had ordered the grilled salmon, one of the evening's special entrees, but barely touched her meal, pushing the food around her plate without actually eating. When Susan asked if everything was okay, Anna looked up and smiled, but Susan later told investigators that the smile didn't reach her eyes. Anna said she was just feeling a bit seasick, though Susan found this explanation odd because the waters were remarkably calm that night. The ship was barely moving, certainly not enough to cause seasickness in someone who had been fine for the previous 2 days of the cruise. Susan didn't push the issue, respecting Anna's privacy, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was bothering the young woman. David Chen noticed something else that evening that would become significant to investigators. He observed that JD spent most of dinner on his phone, occasionally glancing up from the screen to look at his half-sister. The ship had Wi-Fi available for purchase, and apparently JD had been using it throughout the cruise. At one point, David clearly saw JD, appeared to take a photograph in Anna's direction. He didn't think much of it at the time, assuming perhaps the teenager was taking a photo of the dining room or something behind Anna. But later, when investigators asked him to recall every detail of that evening, this moment stood out. Why would someone take a photo of their sibling at dinner, especially when that sibling wasn't posing or even aware of the photo being taken? Patricia Kepner later told investigators that she had also noticed Anna seemed off that evening. As a mother, she knew her daughter well enough to sense when something was wrong. She asked Anna several times if she was feeling all right, if something had happened, if she wanted to talk about anything. Anna insisted she was just tired and not feeling well. Patricia assumed it was simple seasickness or perhaps exhaustion from the busy day of excursions in Grand Cayman. She had no idea that her daughter was afraid that something terrible was about to happen, that this would be the last time she would see Anna alive. At 8:10 p.m., according to precise timestamps from the ship's dining room system, Anna excused herself from the table. She told her mother she wasn't feeling well, that she had a headache and felt nauseous. She said she just needed to lie down for a while and would feel better after some rest. Patricia asked if Anna wanted her to come back to the cabin with her, concerned about her daughter. But Anna insisted she would be fine, that she just needed sleep. Patricia reluctantly agreed, telling Anna to call her if she needed anything. Anna promised she would. Security footage captured Anna leaving the dining room at 8:12 p.m. The cameras show her walking through the main corridor toward the elevator bank, moving slowly, one hand pressed to her forehead as if her head really did hurt. She was wearing the same turquoise sundress from earlier in the day and white sandals. Her blonde hair was down around her shoulders. She looked young, vulnerable, tired. At 8:13 p.m., cameras captured her entering elevator number 3, pressing the button for deck 8. She was alone in the elevator. The footage shows her leaning against the elevator wall, eyes closed, as if trying to steady herself or fighting off nausea. That was the last time anyone except her killer saw Anna Kepner alive. What happened next is where the timeline becomes crucial to understanding this case and ultimately proving JD's guilt. Patricia and Michael told investigators they remained at dinner until approximately 9 p.m. They finished their meals, had dessert, chatted with the Chens about the next day's port stop in Cozumel. JD, however, left the table just minutes after Anna did, around 8:15 p.m. The timing was so close that both the Chens and Patricia remembered it clearly. Anna left, and almost immediately afterward, JD stood up from the table. When Patricia asked where he was going, JD said he wanted to go to the arcade on Deck 5. This wasn't unusual. JD had spent time in the arcade on previous nights, playing racing games and shooting games for hours. Patricia thought nothing of her son wanting to leave dinner early to go play games. Teenage boys did that. Why would she be suspicious? Why would she imagine that her son was about to commit murder? But security footage tells a very different story from the one JD claimed. Cameras captured JD leaving the dining room at 8:13 p.m., just 1 minute after Anna had left. Instead of heading to the elevators that would take him down to Deck 5 where the arcade was located, footage shows him walking in the opposite direction, directly toward the stairwell that led up to Deck 8, where the family cabins were. He entered that stairwell at 8:15 p.m. The camera captured him clearly: navy blue hoodie, dark jeans, white sneakers, the knife visible on his belt. For the next 90 minutes, JD disappeared from all security cameras. This gap in the surveillance coverage became one of the most critical elements of the investigation. The stairwell had cameras at the top and bottom landings, but not inside the stairwell itself, a security gap that cruise lines have since worked to address. JD entered the stairwell at the Deck 3 level but never emerged at Deck 5 where he claimed to be going. In fact, he didn't appear on any security camera anywhere on the ship until 9:42 p.m. That 90-minute window, from 8:15 p.m. to 9:42 p.m., is when investigators believe Anna was murdered. Let me walk you through what investigators believe happened during those 90 minutes, based on forensic evidence, timeline analysis, and the physical evidence recovered from the crime scene. At 8:15 p.m., JD entered the stairwell and climbed up to Deck 8 instead of going down to Deck 5. He walked down the corridor to cabin 8547, Anna's cabin. He either knocked on the door or used a keycard to enter. The question of how he gained access was never fully resolved. Anna may have opened the door for him, not suspecting danger from her own brother, or JD may have had access to a keycard, either by stealing Patricia's spare card or by somehow duplicating his own card to access Anna's cabin. The ship's keycard system logged entries and exits, but investigators found that JD's card had been used to enter cabin 8547 at 8:22 p.m. Once inside the cabin, investigators believe an argument occurred. Based on the crime scene evidence and the position of Anna's body, forensic experts determined that Anna was standing near the bed when the attack happened. Perhaps she was preparing for bed. Perhaps she was trying to get JD to leave her cabin. We will never know her final words, her final thoughts. But we know what happened next changed everything. JD pulled out the folding knife he had been carrying throughout the cruise. With a single swift motion, he slashed Anna's neck from left to right. The blade cut deep, severing her carotid artery and causing catastrophic bleeding. Blood spatter on the wall behind where Anna stood told investigators that the arterial spray was immediate and extensive. Anna would have lost consciousness within seconds and died within minutes. There was no time to call for help, no time to escape, no time for rescue. She died in her cabin, alone with her killer, while thousands of people enjoyed their evening just feet away, completely unaware of the horror happening behind cabin door 8547. The medical examiner's report would later detail the exact nature of the wound. The laceration was approximately 4 inches long and over an inch deep. It showed characteristics of a cutting motion rather than a stabbing motion, indicating a deliberate slash. The angle of the wound, moving from left to right and slightly upward, was consistent with a right-handed attacker standing face-to-face with the victim. The force required to create such a deep wound indicated rage, not hesitation. This was not an accidental injury or a defensive wound. This was an intentional act designed to kill. After Anna fell to the floor and bled out, JD faced a choice. He could have called for help, claimed it was an accident, tried to get medical assistance. Instead, he chose concealment. He dragged or carried Anna's body to the area beside the bed. He pulled blankets from the bed and wrapped her body in them, covering the blood-soaked dress and the gaping wound on her neck. Then he pulled the orange life jackets from the cabin storage area and placed them over the wrapped body, creating an additional layer of concealment. He pushed the bundle under the bed, tucking it as far back as he could, hoping it wouldn't be discovered immediately. He took the knife to the bathroom and wiped it clean, trying to remove the blood evidence. He wiped the blade, wiped the handle, tried to eliminate any trace that would connect the weapon to the crime. But he made a mistake. In the hinge mechanism of the folding knife, blood had seeped into the small crevices and grooves. No amount of wiping could reach that blood. It would still be there when investigators found the knife in the bathroom trash can, and that blood would be scientifically matched to Anna through DNA analysis. JD also tried to clean himself. Investigators later found evidence that the bathroom sink had been used, with traces of diluted blood in the drain. He washed his hands, probably washed his face, tried to remove any visible blood spatter. But again, he made mistakes. Microscopic blood traces remained under his fingernails. And the navy blue hoodie he was wearing had absorbed blood spatter on the front, stains that were barely visible to the naked eye but would light up under forensic examination. After concealing the body, cleaning the weapon, and attempting to clean himself, JD left the cabin. He exited at approximately 9:35 p.m. based on the key card system log. He took the stairwell down to deck 5, carefully avoiding elevators where cameras might capture him more clearly. At 9:38 p.m., security cameras finally captured JD again. The footage is chilling when you understand what it represents. There he is, emerging from the corridor near cabin 8547, wearing the navy blue hoodie, his hands thrust deep into the hoodie pockets, walking quickly with his head down. He moves with purpose, not running but walking fast enough to suggest urgency. His face is partially obscured by the hood, but his profile is unmistakable. This is the killer, minutes after committing murder, attempting to escape undetected. 4 minutes later, at 9:42 p.m., cameras on deck 5 captured JD arriving at the arcade. To anyone who saw him, he looked like a normal teenager arriving to play video games. No blood visible on his dark clothing, no signs of distress or panic. He walked up to one of the racing game machines and began playing as if nothing had happened, as if he hadn't just killed his half-sister and hidden her body under a bed 3 decks above. Carlos Mendez, the arcade attendant whose shift started at 10 p.m., provided investigators with a detailed statement about JD's behavior that evening. Mendez specifically remembered JD because he arrived around 10 p.m. and played the same racing game for over an hour straight, spending nearly $40 in game credits. This was more than most passengers spent, and Mendez noticed it. He described JD as focused on the game, not interacting with anyone, just playing repeatedly. When Mendez tried to make small talk, asking if JD was enjoying the cruise, JD gave minimal responses. "Yeah, it's fine. Nothing wrong. Just playing games." What's particularly chilling is that Mendez noted the time JD arrived, because it was right around when Mendez's shift started at 10 p.m. This directly contradicted JD's later claim that he had been at the arcade since 8:30 p.m. Mendez was certain JD was not there before 10 p.m. So where was he for that hour and a half between 8:15 and 10 p.m.? The evidence would show he was in cabin 8547, murdering his sister and attempting to cover up the crime. Patricia and Michael returned to their cabin, room 8549, at 9:15 p.m. They were full from dinner, tired from the day's excursions, ready to relax for the evening. According to their statements, they assumed both Anna and JD were in their respective rooms or elsewhere on the ship. The connecting door between their cabin and Anna's cabin was closed, which was normal for the family. Anna valued her privacy, and they respected that. Patricia knocked on the connecting door around 10 p.m. to check on Anna and see if she was feeling any better. No answer. She knocked again, a little louder. Still no answer. Patricia told investigators that she assumed Anna was sleeping deeply after feeling ill. She didn't want to disturb her daughter if she was finally resting. So she went back to her cabin, watched some television with Michael, and prepared for bed herself. Around 11:45 p.m., Patricia tried one more time. She knocked on the connecting door and called out Anna's name. Nothing. She put her ear to the door, listening for any sound. Silence. Concerned but still not alarmed, Patricia told herself that Anna must be exhausted and sleeping soundly. She went to bed, completely unaware that her daughter was already dead, her body hidden under the bed just feet away. The next morning, March 22nd, Patricia woke up around 6:30 a.m. She had slept poorly, worried about Anna. As soon as she woke, she tried calling Anna's cell phone. The call went straight to voicemail. She called again. Voicemail. Growing more concerned, she got dressed and went to knock on the connecting door. She knocked loudly, repeatedly, calling Anna's name. No answer. Now genuinely worried that something was wrong, Patricia used her key card to unlock the connecting door and enter cabin 8547. The scene that greeted her appeared normal at first. The cabin was neat. The bed looked undisturbed, still made from when housekeeping had cleaned the day before. Anna's suitcase was in the corner, her clothes hanging in the closet, her toiletries in the bathroom, but Anna wasn't there. Patricia checked the bathroom, thinking maybe Anna was in the shower. Empty. She looked in the closet, as if Anna might somehow be hiding there. Nothing. That's when Patricia noticed something odd. The bed skirt, the decorative fabric that hung down from the bed frame to the floor, was pushed up slightly in one area, and beneath it she could see something. Fabric, orange, bunched up. Patricia Kepner knelt down on the floor, her heart beginning to race, some instinct telling her that something was very wrong. She lowered her head to look under the bed, and there, in the dim space beneath the bed frame, wrapped in blankets and partially covered by bright orange life jackets, was a form, a body, her daughter's body. Patricia screamed. She screamed so loudly that passengers in nearby cabins heard it and would later tell investigators that the sound was unlike anything they had ever heard. Pure horror, pure anguish. The scream of a mother discovering her child murdered. Patricia's screams brought Michael running from their cabin. He looked under the bed and saw what Patricia had seen. He immediately called ship security while Patricia collapsed on the floor, sobbing and screaming Anna's name. Within minutes, security officers arrived. At 7:48 a.m., Security Director James Holland entered cabin 8547. He took one look at the scene and immediately recognized this was no accident, no natural death, no suicide. The body was hidden, deliberately concealed beneath the bed and covered with life jackets. Someone had tried to hide what had happened here. This was homicide. Holland had been working in maritime security for 12 years and had dealt with deaths aboard ships before. Heart attacks, falls, even a suicide. But he had never encountered a murder scene at sea. He immediately secured the cabin, ordering everyone out except Patricia, who was being attended to by victim advocates. He contacted Captain Richard Morrison and delivered the news. They had a murder aboard the Carnival Horizon. The captain made immediate decisions. Contact the FBI, secure the crime scene, begin interviewing witnesses, alter course for the nearest port, Cozumel, Mexico, where law enforcement could board and take over the investigation. At 8:15 a.m., FBI Special Agent Rebecca Torres, based at the Miami field office, received the call that would consume her life for the next several months. A murder aboard a cruise ship in international waters. American citizens, complex jurisdiction. She immediately assembled a team and arranged for emergency transport to Cozumel to meet the ship when it docked. Dr. Stephen Palmer, the ship's medical officer, was permitted to conduct a preliminary examination of the body at 8:30 a.m. while it remained in situ under the bed. This preliminary examination was crucial for establishing basic facts before the body was moved. Dr. Palmer carefully moved aside the life jackets and blankets, revealing Anna's body. She was still wearing the turquoise sundress from dinner the night before. The dress was soaked with blood, dried and stiffened by this point. Dr. Palmer immediately noted the significant laceration to Anna's neck, approximately 4 inches in length, located on the left side. The wound gaped open, revealing severed tissue and vessels beneath. The amount of blood suggested the carotid artery had been severed, which would cause death within minutes. Dr. Palmer checked for rigor mortis, the stiffening of muscles that occurs after death. Anna's body was in full rigor mortis, indicating she had been dead for at least 8 hours, probably longer. He checked body temperature, though the exact reading was less useful given that the body had been in a climate-controlled cabin rather than exposed to elements. Based on all indicators, including rigor mortis, lividity patterns, and body temperature, Dr. Palmer estimated time of death to be between 8 p.m. and midnight on March 21st, with the most likely window being between 8:30 and 10:30 p.m. This preliminary assessment would later be confirmed by the medical examiner's more detailed autopsy. The ship altered course and made for Cozumel at maximum speed, traveling at 22 knots rather than the usual cruising speed of 16 knots. While en route, ship security began the critical work of interviewing everyone who had contact with the Kepner family. Security officer Amanda Chen was assigned to interview JD, and that interview would become crucial evidence at trial. Amanda Chen had been working in maritime security for 20 years. She had conducted hundreds of interviews, delivered bad news to countless passengers, dealt with every kind of crisis from medical emergencies to thefts to assaults. She knew how people reacted to trauma, to grief, to shock. When she sat down with JD in a private conference room at 10 a.m. to inform him that his sister had been found dead, his reaction struck her as profoundly wrong. Chen began gently, as she always did when delivering such news. She asked JD to sit down, told him she had difficult news to share. JD sat, looked at her with what she later described as mild curiosity, not concern. Chen said, "I'm very sorry to tell you this, but your sister Anna has been found deceased in her cabin this morning." Most people, Chen knew from experience, would react immediately. Shock, denial, questions, tears, disbelief, some combination of intense emotional response. But JD just looked at her for a moment, his expression barely changing. Then he asked calmly, flatly, "Where did you find her?" Not how did she die, not what happened. Not are you sure? Maybe there's been a mistake. His first question was about location. Where was the body found? Chen found this so unusual that she made a specific note of it in her report within minutes of the interview ending. She had just told a 16-year-old that his sister was dead, and his response was to ask where the body was located. As if he needed to confirm that his concealment had been discovered, Chen proceeded with the interview, asking JD about his activities the previous evening. JD said he had gone to the arcade after dinner, around 8:30 p.m., and stayed there playing games until nearly 11 p.m. Then he had gone back to his cabin and gone to sleep. He claimed he hadn't seen Anna since dinner. When Chen asked if he had any idea what might have happened to his sister, JD shrugged and said maybe she had an accident or something. His affect, Chen later testified, was completely flat. No emotion, no tears, no signs of distress. He could have been discussing the weather. When Chen pushed him on the timeline, asking what specific games he had played at the arcade, JD became vague. Racing games, shooting games. He couldn't remember exactly. When Chen asked if anyone at the arcade could confirm he was there, JD said probably not because he didn't talk to anyone. This response struck Chen as suspicious. If you've been playing games in an arcade for hours, staff members typically remember you, especially if you're a teenager spending significant amounts of money on games. The ship arrived in Cozumel at 2:47 p.m. on March 22nd. Mexican authorities boarded first, as the ship was docking in Mexican territorial waters. Then FBI agents, including Special Agent Rebecca Torres, came aboard. Torres took immediate control of the investigation, coordinating with Mexican authorities and ship security. Her first priority was the crime scene. Cabin 8547 was photographed extensively before anything was moved. Every angle, every surface, every detail was captured on camera. The bed with its pushed-up bed skirt, the area beneath the bed where the body had been found, the blankets and life jackets that had concealed the body, the bathroom, the closet, the door and its lock mechanism. Everything was documented in its original state. Then began the meticulous process of collecting evidence. Blood spatter on the wall behind where Anna had been standing was photographed with special lighting and measurement scales. Samples were collected from each spatter. The pattern told a story to trained forensic experts. The arterial spray was characteristic of a severed carotid artery. The height and angle of the spatter indicated Anna had been standing facing her attacker, approximately 5 feet 6 inches tall. The direction of the spray showed the wound had been inflicted from left to right, suggesting a right-handed attacker. Fingerprints were lifted from every surface, the door handles inside and out, the bathroom fixtures, the closet door, the bed frame. Every item in the room was examined for potential evidence. Anna's phone was collected, her laptop, her journal, which was found in her suitcase. All of it was bagged, labeled, and preserved for forensic analysis. Then came the discovery that would prove most damning for JD. In the bathroom trash can, under some wadded tissues and an empty shampoo bottle, investigators found a small folding knife. The blade was approximately 3 inches long, partially folded into the handle. The knife appeared to have been wiped clean, but when forensic technicians applied luminol, a chemical that reacts with blood even after cleaning, the knife lit up like a Christmas tree. There was blood in the hinge mechanism, blood that had seeped into the small grooves and crevices where no amount of wiping could reach it. The knife was a Benchmade Mini Griptilian, a high-quality folding knife popular among outdoors enthusiasts and knife collectors. It retailed for approximately $90, suggesting it wasn't a cheap impulse purchase, but rather something someone had specifically chosen and valued. The knife showed signs of regular maintenance with a sharp, well-oiled blade, indicating the owner took care of it and used it regularly. But the most critical evidence on that knife was a partial fingerprint on the handle. Despite the wiping, one print had survived, preserved on the textured grip surface. That print was carefully lifted, photographed, and sent for analysis. Within days, the results would come back. The partial fingerprint matched JD's left index finger with 12 points of comparison, well above the standard required for courtroom admissibility. The knife belonged to JD. His fingerprint was on it, and blood matching Anna's DNA was in the hinge mechanism. The murder weapon had been found, and it pointed directly to her half-brother. The body was carefully removed from the cabin and transported to the morgue at Cozumel General Hospital for autopsy. Dr. Maria Gonzalez, the chief medical examiner for the region, conducted the post-mortem examination on March 23rd. Her findings would provide critical details about how Anna died and when. The primary injury was the deep laceration to the left side of the neck, measuring 10.2 centimeters in length and 3.1 centimeters at its deepest point. The wound had severed the left carotid artery completely, as well as the left jugular vein and surrounding musculature. The weapon had been sharp and the force significant, creating a clean cut through multiple layers of tissue. Death would have resulted from exsanguination, bleeding out, within approximately 2 to 4 minutes. There would have been no chance of survival without immediate emergency medical intervention, which obviously had not occurred. Dr. Gonzalez also noted defensive wounds on Anna's hands. Shallow cuts on her palms and fingers suggested she had tried to grab the blade or defend herself during the attack. Under her fingernails, the medical examiner found skin cells and trace DNA that would later be analyzed. These findings indicated that Anna had fought back, had scratched at her attacker, had tried to survive even as she was dying. Based on rigor mortis, lividity, body temperature, and gastric contents, Dr. Gonzalez estimated time of death between 8 p.m. and 10 p.m. on March 21st, most likely around 9 p.m. This timeline was consistent with Dr. Palmer's preliminary assessment and, more importantly, consistent with the timeline when JD was unaccounted for by any witnesses or security cameras. While the autopsy was being conducted, FBI agents were conducting intensive interviews with every member of the Kepner family and numerous witnesses. Patricia Kepner was interviewed for nearly 4 hours. Special Agent Torres handled the questioning personally, recognizing that Patricia was both a grieving mother and a crucial source of information about family dynamics. Patricia told investigators about the troubled history of her blended family, about JD's difficult childhood with his abusive biological father, about the challenges of bringing 2 children from previous relationships together into one household, and critically about her growing concerns over the past year regarding JD's behavior toward Anna. Patricia described incidents that, in hindsight, seemed like blazing warning signs, but that she had tried to dismiss as normal sibling conflict. JD going through Anna's belongings repeatedly. JD following Anna when she went out with friends. JD showing up at Anna's school or her part-time job at a local pet store without any reason to be there. Anna had complained to Patricia about this behavior multiple times, saying it made her uncomfortable, saying she felt like JD was obsessed with her. Patricia admitted to investigators that she had told Anna she was overreacting, that JD was just trying to be close to his sister, that Anna should be more understanding of her brother's struggles. Now Patricia blamed herself. She should have listened to Anna. She should have taken her daughter's concerns seriously. She should have gotten JD more intensive psychological help. She should have never taken them on this cruise where Anna was essentially trapped on a ship with nowhere to escape from her brother's constant presence. The guilt was consuming her, and it would only grow worse as more evidence emerged about just how much danger Anna had been in. Investigators requested and obtained court documents from Florida Family Court. These records revealed that Patricia had actually filed multiple reports with school counselors and family therapists about JD's behavior toward Anna. particularly in the 6 months leading up to the cruise. In a report from January 2024, just 2 months before the cruise, Patricia had documented that JD had been caught going through Anna's room multiple times. When confronted, JD became angry and defensive, insisting he was just looking for something he had lost. Patricia wrote in the report that Anna was becoming increasingly anxious and uncomfortable at home, that she had started locking her bedroom door at night, that she had expressed wanting to move out before college started. School records from JD's high school in Fort Lauderdale painted an even more concerning picture. He had been suspended twice in the 2023-2024 school year. The first suspension was in October 2023 for bringing a weapon to school. That weapon was the same Benchmade folding knife that would later be found in Anna's cabin covered in her blood. School administrators had confiscated the knife and suspended JD for 3 days. However, after JD's parents picked up the knife from the school office and promised it would not return to school, no further action was taken. No police report was filed. No permanent record was created beyond the school's internal documentation. The second suspension came in February 2024, just 1 month before the cruise, following an altercation with another male student. According to witness statements from other students, JD had confronted a boy who was talking to Anna in the cafeteria. When the boy continued the conversation despite JD's presence, JD shoved him and threatened him, telling him to stay away from his sister. The other student and witnesses reported that JD's reaction was far out of proportion to the situation, that it seemed possessive and aggressive. JD was suspended for 5 days and required to attend anger management counseling as a condition of returning to school. Psychological evaluations ordered by the school as part of the anger management requirement provided additional insight into JD's mental state. Dr. Linda Martinez, the school psychologist, had evaluated JD in February 2024. Her written evaluation, obtained by investigators through subpoena, described a troubled teenager with difficulty regulating emotions and poor impulse control. Dr. Martinez noted that JD exhibited signs of attachment disorder, likely stemming from his chaotic early childhood with his abusive father. She also noted something more concerning. JD displayed an inappropriate level of interest in his half-sister's activities and whereabouts. In her evaluation, Dr. Martinez wrote, "Patient shows concerning fixation on sibling Anna. When discussing family relationships, patient becomes visibly agitated when talking about Anna's social life and college plans. Patient expresses resentment about Anna leaving for college and has stated he doesn't want her to go. Patient has difficulty articulating appropriate boundaries between siblings. Recommend intensive family therapy to address these concerning dynamics before they escalate." That recommendation for intensive family therapy was made in February 2024. The cruise was in March. The therapy never happened. Anna never got the protection that might have saved her life. Investigators also interviewed Anna's friends, and their statements painted a picture of a young woman who was increasingly afraid of her own brother. Jessica Martinez, Anna's best friend since middle school, provided a lengthy statement to FBI agents. She and Anna talked or texted almost every day, sharing everything the way teenage best friends do. Jessica told investigators that Anna had been confiding in her about JD's behavior for months, describing it as creepy and invasive. Jessica recalled specific incidents Anna had shared with her. In December 2023, Anna came home from a date to find JD waiting up for her, demanding to know where she had been and who she had been with. When Anna told him it was none of his business, JD followed her to her room and tried to force his way inside as she was closing the door. Anna had to physically push against the door to keep him out. Another time in January 2024, Anna discovered JD had been going through her phone while she was in the shower. She found him in her room holding her phone, which she had left charging on her desk. He claimed he was just checking the time, but Anna knew he had been reading her text messages. Most disturbingly, Jessica told investigators that Anna had shown her text messages from JD that were, in Jessica's words, completely inappropriate and obsessive. The messages expressed jealousy about Anna's boyfriend, anger about her college plans, resentment that she was leaving. Unfortunately, Anna had deleted these messages, feeling uncomfortable keeping them on her phone. Investigators were unable to recover them, but Jessica's testimony about their existence and content was admissible in court and would prove significant at trial. Another friend, Michael Torres, corroborated Jessica's statements. He told investigators that Anna had talked to him about her half-brother's behavior, describing feeling suffocated and watched all the time. Anna told Michael that JD followed her when she went out, sometimes showing up at places where she was with friends, even though he had no reason to be there, and no way of knowing she would be there unless he had been tracking her somehow. Anna had checked her phone for tracking apps and hadn't found anything, but the coincidences were too frequent to be accidental. Then came perhaps the most powerful evidence of all. Investigators recovered Anna's personal journal from her suitcase in cabin 8547. The journal was a standard college-ruled notebook, filled with Anna's handwriting dating back several months. As investigators read through the entries, a chilling narrative emerged of a young woman trapped in an increasingly frightening situation with her own family member. The entries from November 2023 described JD's behavior as annoying and intrusive. Anna wrote about coming home to find him in her room, about him following her around the house, about him asking constant questions about her social life. The tone was frustrated but not yet fearful. By January 2024, the tone had changed. Anna wrote, "I can't take this anymore. He watches me constantly. I feel like I'm being stalked in my own home. I tried talking to Mom again, but she just says I'm being dramatic. Why won't anyone believe me that this isn't normal? I'm counting the days until I leave for college." An entry from February 2024, shortly after JD's suspension from school for the altercation about Anna, read, "He got suspended for threatening a guy from my biology class, just for talking to me. This is insane. I'm genuinely starting to feel scared of him. The way he looks at me sometimes, it's like he hates me and is obsessed with me at the same time. I don't know what to do." But it was the final entries, written in March, just before and during the cruise, that were most haunting. On March 15th, 4 days before the cruise departed, Anna wrote, "I don't want to go on this trip. Being stuck on a ship with him for a week sounds like a nightmare. He doesn't understand the word no. He doesn't respect my space. Mom keeps saying I'm overreacting, but she doesn't see the way he looks at me. She doesn't see him when no one else is around. I'm scared of what he might do if he gets me alone." The final entry in the journal was dated March 21st, the day Anna died. It was written in the morning, probably before the family went ashore for the Grand Cayman excursions. Anna wrote, "One more week. I just have to survive one more week. Then I go to college orientation and I'll finally be free of him. Just one more week. I can do this. I have to do this. Please God, let me make it through this week." Anna did not make it through that week. That evening, she would be dead, killed by the person she was trying to escape. The journal was entered into evidence and would be read in court, Anna's own words testifying to her fear and her killer's obsessive behavior, even though Anna herself could no longer speak. For everyone in that courtroom, hearing Anna's words, knowing that just hours after writing that final entry she would be dead, was almost unbearable. Several jurors cried. Patricia Kepner sobbed. Even the judge had to call a brief recess to compose herself. As investigators dug deeper, they uncovered more evidence that pointed inexorably toward JD's guilt. Forensic analysis of the DNA recovered from beneath Anna's fingernails came back with results. The skin cells matched JD's genetic profile. The probability of the DNA belonging to someone other than JD was approximately 1 in 7 billion, essentially making the match certain. This evidence proved that Anna had scratched her attacker during the assault, that she had fought for her life, and that her attacker was her half-brother. Fiber analysis provided additional confirmation. The blankets that had been wrapped around Anna's body were analyzed under microscopic examination. Forensic experts found fibers that matched the composition and color of the navy blue hoodie JD had been wearing the evening of the murder. The cotton polyester blend, the specific dye used, and the manufacturing characteristics all matched. The quantity and location of these fibers on the blankets suggested direct, sustained contact, not casual transfer that might occur from living in proximity. Someone wearing that hoodie had handled those blankets extensively, wrapping them around Anna's body to conceal it. But prosecutors had one more piece of evidence that would prove absolutely devastating to any defense JD might mount. Digital forensics experts from the FBI examined JD's laptop computer, which had been seized from his cabin aboard the ship. What they found in the internet search history dating back weeks before the cruise provided clear evidence of premeditation and planning. Between February 15th and March 18th, 2024, JD had conducted multiple searches that demonstrated he had been thinking about murder and how to evade detection. The searches included how to get away with murder, what happens to murderers who are minors, crimes committed in international waters, cruise ship murders, can police track you on a cruise ship, do cruise ships have security cameras everywhere, and how long does DNA last after someone dies? These searches were time-stamped and could not be denied or explained away. They showed clear premeditation, showing that JD had been researching murder, specifically murder on cruise ships in international waters, in the weeks leading up to the trip. He knew what he was planning. He knew how to try to get away with it. He brought his knife onto the ship despite knowing weapons were discouraged. He researched where cameras were located. He planned his attack for a time when Anna would be alone in her cabin and when he could create an alibi at the arcade. Every step was calculated. On April 15, 2024, JD was formally charged in U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Florida with murder in the first degree committed in international waters. The charge carried a maximum sentence of life in prison. Because JD was 16 at the time of the offense, the case initially went to juvenile court. However, prosecutors immediately filed a motion to transfer the case to adult court, arguing that the severity of the crime, the clear evidence of premeditation, and the defendant's understanding of his actions warranted adult prosecution. A transfer hearing was held in August 2024 before Judge Martin Goldstein. The hearing lasted 3 days and included testimony from psychologists, juvenile justice experts, and detailed examination of the evidence. The defense argued that JD's age, his troubled childhood, and his mental health issues made him more appropriate for the juvenile system where rehabilitation would be the focus. They presented testimony from Dr. James Wilson, a forensic psychologist, who described JD's diagnosis of attachment disorder, anxiety, and depression, all stemming from early childhood trauma. But the prosecution countered with their own expert, Dr. Amanda Richardson, who had extensively evaluated JD. Dr. Richardson testified that while JD did have mental health issues, they did not rise to the level of impairment that would prevent him from understanding right from wrong or from forming criminal intent. She noted that JD's internet searches, his planning, his concealment of the crime, and his attempt to establish an alibi all demonstrated sophisticated thinking and goal-directed behavior inconsistent with someone unable to comprehend his actions. Judge Goldstein issued his ruling in a detailed written decision. He found that the crime was exceptionally serious, involving premeditation, violence, and deliberate concealment. JD's prior behavioral problems, including weapons violations at school and aggressive conduct, demonstrated a pattern of escalating dangerous behavior. The psychological evaluations showed mental health issues but not impairment severe enough to excuse his actions. Most critically, the judge found that the juvenile justice system, which would release JD at age 21, regardless of the severity of his crime, was wholly inadequate given the calculated murder of his sister. JD would be tried as an adult. The trial began on October 7, 2024, in Miami Federal Court. Judge Catherine Morrison presided over the proceedings in a courtroom packed daily with media representatives, legal observers, and members of the public who had followed the case since it first made headlines. The trial would last 3 weeks and present some of the most compelling evidence ever seen in a maritime murder case. Lead prosecutor assistant U.S. Attorney Jennifer Martinez delivered a powerful 45-minute opening statement. She told the jury they would hear evidence proving beyond any reasonable doubt that JD had murdered his half-sister in cold blood. She described the internet searches showing premeditation, the security footage showing his movements, the forensic evidence including the knife with his fingerprint and Anna's blood, the DNA under Anna's fingernails, the fibers from his clothing, Anna's journal documenting her fear. She told the jury this was not a case of sudden rage or loss of control, but rather a calculated murder by someone who had been planning it and who tried to cover it up. Defense attorney Sarah Patterson countered with an opening that acknowledged the tragedy, but asked the jury to consider JD's age, his troubled background, and the possibility that while he may have been involved in Anna's death, it was not the premeditated murder the prosecution claimed. She argued that the evidence was circumstantial in many respects and that reasonable doubt existed. Over the next 3 weeks, the prosecution methodically built their case. They called 42 witnesses, including ship personnel, forensic experts, Anna's friends, and family members. Each witness added another piece to the puzzle until the complete picture of what happened that night emerged clearly. Security Director James Holland testified about discovering the crime scene and the immediate investigative steps taken. He walked the jury through the ship's security camera system, explaining where cameras were located and showing footage of JD's movements the night of the murder. The jury watched the footage of Anna leaving the dining room at 8:12 p.m. tired and alone. They watched JD leave 1 minute later, heading not toward the arcade as he had claimed, but toward the stairwell leading to Anna's deck. And they watched the chilling footage from 9:38 p.m. of JD emerging from the area of Anna's cabin, hands in pockets, walking quickly away from the scene of the crime he had just committed. Dr. Maria Gonzalez, the medical examiner, testified about the autopsy findings. She used diagrams and medical terminology to explain how the wound to Anna's neck had caused her death. She described the defensive wounds on Anna's hands, showing the jury photographs that illustrated how Anna had tried to fight off her attacker. The courtroom was silent as Dr. Gonzalez presented her findings, the reality of Anna's violent death hanging heavy in the air. FBI forensic experts provided detailed testimony about the physical evidence. DNA analyst Dr. Sarah Chen explained how the skin cells under Anna's fingernails were matched to JD through genetic testing. She used charts and visual aids to help the jury understand how DNA analysis works and why the match was scientifically certain. Blood spatter expert Dr. Michael Chen reconstructed the attack for the jury using the blood evidence from the cabin. He showed how Anna had been standing near the bed when she was attacked, how the arterial spray pattern indicated a right-handed attacker facing the victim, how everything about the physical evidence was consistent with the prosecution's theory of what happened. Fingerprint expert Robert Martinez testified about the partial print recovered from the knife and how it matched JD's finger with 12 points of comparison. Fiber analysis expert Dr. Lisa Wong explained how the fibers from JD's hoodie had been transferred to the blankets used to conceal Anna's body, demonstrating direct contact between the clothing and the concealment materials. Perhaps the most emotional testimony came from Anna's friends and family. Jessica Martinez cried throughout her testimony as she described Anna's fears about her brother and the specific incidents Anna had shared with her. Michael Torres testified about the text messages Anna had shown him. Cruise passengers described the argument they witnessed between Anna and JD, the tension they observed, the knife they saw JD carrying. Patricia Kepner's testimony brought the courtroom to tears. She described finding Anna's body, a memory that she said haunted every moment of her existence. She talked about Anna's dreams, her kindness, her passion for marine biology. She read portions of Anna's journal aloud, her voice breaking as she spoke her daughter's words, expressing fear of her own brother. When asked about her relationship with JD, Patricia broke down completely, saying she blamed herself for not protecting Anna, for not listening, for not seeing the danger until it was too late. The prosecution's final witness was FBI digital forensics expert Thomas Bradley, who testified about JD's internet search history. The jury saw screenshots of the searches: how to get away with murder, crimes in international waters, cruise ship murders. Bradley explained that these searches had been conducted in the weeks before the cruise, showing that JD had been planning and researching how to commit a crime and evade detection. The timestamps and the specific content left no doubt about JD's state of mind leading up to Anna's death. The defense called several witnesses in an attempt to create reasonable doubt and argue for a lesser charge. They presented psychiatric experts who testified about JD's difficult childhood, his mental health diagnoses, and the trauma he experienced witnessing domestic violence. Dr. James Wilson testified that JD's attachment disorder and emotional regulation problems affected his ability to control impulses and process emotions appropriately. The defense argued that even if JD killed Anna, it was not the calculated, premeditated murder the prosecution claimed, but rather a spontaneous act of rage that should be classified as voluntary manslaughter. But the prosecution's rebuttal was devastating. They called Dr. Amanda Richardson, who had evaluated JD extensively. She testified that while JD had mental health issues, he clearly understood right from wrong and had the capacity to plan and execute complex actions. The internet searches alone, she argued, demonstrated sophisticated planning and understanding of consequences. The concealment of the body, the cleaning of the weapon, the attempt to establish an alibi, all of these actions showed clear thinking and goal-directed behavior, not uncontrolled rage. Prosecutor Martinez gave a powerful closing argument that tied all the evidence together. She reminded the jury of Anna's journal entry, "Please God, let me make it through this week." Anna didn't make it through that week because her brother had been planning to kill her. The internet searches proved it. The knife he brought aboard proved it. The calculated timing when Anna was alone proved it. And the evidence left behind, the fingerprint, the DNA, the fibers, the security footage, all proved beyond any shadow of doubt that JD murdered Anna and tried to get away with it. The jury deliberated for 2 days. On November 1st, 2024, they returned with their verdict. The courtroom was packed, every seat filled, people standing along the walls. Patricia Kepner sat in the front row, flanked by victim advocates, her hands clenched together in her lap. JD stood next to his attorney, his face expressionless. The jury foreman, a retired engineer named Thomas Bradley, stood to read the verdict. "We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of murder in the first degree." The courtroom erupted. Patricia Kepner collapsed forward, sobbing. Supporters of Anna's family cried and embraced each other. JD showed no visible reaction, staring straight ahead as if the verdict had nothing to do with him. Judge Morrison had to gavel for order multiple times before the courtroom settled enough to proceed. The verdict was final. JD had been convicted of murdering his half-sister. Sentencing was scheduled for December 15, 2024. Under federal law, JD faced life in prison, but the court had to determine whether he would have any possibility of parole. Federal sentencing guidelines for juvenile offenders tried as adults allow for the possibility of parole consideration after 35 years, but it is not automatic. The judge would make that determination based on the specific circumstances of the case. The sentencing hearing lasted an entire day. Victim impact statements came first. Patricia Kepner read a statement describing the unbearable pain of losing her daughter and the complicated grief of having her son be the murderer. She said she had lost both her children on that ship, one to death and one to prison, and that the guilt of not protecting Anna consumed her every day. She asked the court to impose the maximum sentence, saying that JD had not only killed Anna, but had destroyed an entire family. Anna's father, Gregory Kepner, who had been largely absent from Anna's life, also spoke. He expressed regret for not being more involved, for not being there to protect her. He said he had started a college fund for Anna that would now become a scholarship in her name. He asked the court to ensure that JD never had the chance to hurt anyone else. Several of Anna's friends provided written statements that were read into the record, describing Anna's kindness, her dreams, and the void her absence had created in their lives. The defense presented mitigating evidence, asking the court to consider JD's age and troubled background. But it was clear that sympathy for JD was in short supply. JD was given the opportunity to address the court. He stood, wearing an orange jumpsuit and handcuffs, and spoke briefly. He said he was sorry for what happened to Anna and acknowledged the pain he had caused. But notably, he did not explicitly admit to killing her, maintaining some degree of ambiguity that frustrated prosecutors and Anna's family. Judge Morrison took several hours to deliberate before returning to deliver her sentence. She began with a lengthy statement about the case, acknowledging the tragedy while emphasizing the severity of JD's actions. She said that while she had considered his age and difficult childhood, these factors could not excuse or significantly mitigate the brutal, premeditated murder of his sister. She noted that Anna was vulnerable, that she had trusted JD as family, and that he had betrayed that trust in the most violent way imaginable. Judge Morrison sentenced JD to life in prison without the possibility of parole. She stated that the premeditation evident in the internet searches, the bringing of the weapon, the calculated timing of the attack, the brutal nature of the killing, the efforts to conceal the crime, and JD's lack of genuine remorse all warranted the harshest sentence available under law. JD would spend the rest of his life in federal prison. There would be no parole, no second chance, no freedom. The case has had lasting impacts beyond JD's conviction and sentence. The Anna Kepner murder led to significant changes in cruise industry practices and maritime law. In 2025, Carnival Cruise Line and other major operators implemented enhanced security protocols, including expanded camera coverage in all corridor areas, leading to passenger cabins, mandatory weapons screening for all passengers during embarkation with specific focus on knives and prohibited items, enhanced crew training to recognize signs of domestic disputes or concerning passenger behavior, and immediate FBI notification protocols for any death aboard ship that appears suspicious or occurs under unusual circumstances. Congressional hearings were held examining cruise ship safety and the legal complexities of investigating crimes in international waters. Representative Maria Sanchez of Florida introduced the Cruise Ship Safety and Security Act of 2025, which would mandate minimum security standards for all cruise ships operating from U.S. ports, require immediate reporting of all crimes to the FBI regardless of jurisdiction, create a public database of crimes committed aboard cruise ships, and establish clearer protocols for investigating and prosecuting maritime crimes. The FBI established a dedicated maritime crime task force with Special Agent Rebecca Torres as its head. The task force focuses specifically on crimes occurring in international waters and works to improve coordination between cruise lines, foreign governments, and U.S. law enforcement. For Patricia Kepner, life after the trial has been a struggle to find any kind of normalcy or peace. She divorced Michael Dawson in early 2025, unable to continue the relationship while carrying the weight of Anna's death. She moved away from Fort Lauderdale to a small town in North Carolina, seeking distance from the memories and the media attention. She has become an advocate for recognizing and addressing sibling abuse, speaking at conferences and schools about the warning signs that were missed in her own family. In March 2025, exactly 1 year after Anna's death, Patricia established the Anna Kepner Foundation for Sibling Safety. The foundation provides resources for families dealing with dangerous sibling dynamics, trains mental health professionals to recognize warning signs, and advocates for better policies to protect vulnerable children, even when the threat comes from within their own family. Anna's father, Gregory, established a scholarship fund at the University of Miami in Anna's name. The full tuition scholarship is awarded annually to students pursuing marine biology degrees who demonstrate Anna's passion for ocean conservation. The first recipient was a young woman from Fort Lauderdale who, like Anna, dreamed of protecting marine ecosystems. Today, JD remains in federal custody at a facility in Pennsylvania that houses young adult offenders. He is now 17 years old and will be transferred to an adult federal penitentiary when he turns 18. He has had no contact with any family members since his conviction. Patricia has stated publicly that she cannot visit him, cannot face the person who killed her daughter, even though he is her son. The bond has been irreparably severed by his actions. The questions raised by this case continue to resonate. Could Anna's death have been prevented? The warning signs were there. Anna's journal, the school suspensions, the documented behavioral concerns, the friends who witnessed her fear, the psychological evaluation recommending intensive intervention. Each of these represented an opportunity to intervene, to separate JD from Anna, to get him help, to protect her. But the opportunities were missed or ignored, and Anna paid with her life. The case serves as a tragic reminder that family violence is often hidden, that the greatest danger sometimes comes from those closest to us, and that young people's expressions of fear should be taken seriously. Anna tried to tell people she was afraid. She wrote about it in her journal. She told her friends. She complained to her mother. But no one took action sufficient to save her life. For those who knew Anna, who investigated her death, who followed this case, the pain and the questions remain. Anna Kepner was 18 years old with dreams of protecting the ocean she loved. She was kind, smart, and excited about her future. And in one act of calculated violence by someone who should have loved her, all of that was stolen. If this case has impacted you, make sure to subscribe to True Crime Vault for more investigations that seek truth and justice. Hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think about the warning signs that were missed? How can we better protect young people from family violence? Should cruise lines have even stricter security measures? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section. And remember, these stories aren't entertainment. They're real tragedies involving real people whose lives were destroyed by violence. Anna Kepner deserved so much better than the short life she got. She deserved to grow up, pursue her dreams, make a difference in the world. Instead, she's gone. Another victim of a crime that might have been prevented if people had listened. Rest in peace, Anna Kepner. Your story will be remembered, and hopefully, the lessons learned from this tragedy will help protect others in the future. Until next time, this is True Crime Vault, unlocking the cases that deserve to be remembered and demanding that we do better to protect the vulnerable among us.